Shocking reunion. Sam alive and desperate escape from Faison's laboratory. Poor Charles is rocked by one of its most explosive revelations. Yet, Sam McCall, believed dead for months, emerges alive from captivity alongside Police Commissioner Anna Dean after a daring escape from a mysterious laboratory where the presumed deceased Caesar Faison has been conducting secret experiments. The shocking return sends shockwaves through the community and forces Jason Morgan to confront the impossible truth. The Port Charles community was devastated when Samuel was believed to have died months ago. A tragedy that left her loved ones, especially Jason Morgan, broken and searching for answers. The anniversary of her presumed death had recently passed, with the entire town mourning the loss of the intelligent, resilient woman who had become integral to so many lives in the fictional upstate New York City. However, what no one could have anticipated was that Sam's death was far from the truth she and Anna Dean would soon reveal. The kidnapping of Commissioner Anna Dean. Police Commissioner Anna Dean had grown increasingly suspicious about the return of Caesar Faison, the notorious villain from her past who had terrorized Port Charles for years. When Anna learned that Britt Westben and Nathan West, Faison's own children who had been presumed dead, had mysteriously reappeared in Port Charles, her instincts as a seasoned law enforcement official and WASB agent kicked into high gear. Something was deeply wrong, and Anna was determined to uncover the truth. During what appeared to be a routine day, Anna was attacked while sitting in her car. A hand reached from behind, pressing a chloroform-soaked cloth over her face. As consciousness faded, her last coherent thought was that her worst fears might be justified. When Anna awoke, she found herself in an unfamiliar room, metal handcuffs binding her to a cold steel chair. The voice that echoed through the space sent chills down her spine. It was Caesar Faison's voice, transmitted through a speaker system. "Be at peace, Anna." The menacing voice crackled through. "You're on your way to a new life." The words carried the weight of years of psychological torment. Anna had believed this man was dead, that she had finally freed herself and Port Charles from his evil. Yet here she was, a prisoner in what appeared to be some kind of laboratory facility, with Faison seemingly orchestrating her captivity. A shocking discovery: Sam is alive. Confined to her cell, Anna struggled to make sense of her situation as she called out for help, desperately trying to understand where she was and Lifine had taken her. She heard movement in an adjacent area. Then, impossibly, a familiar voice called out. It was Sam McCall. Sam, who had been dead for months. Sam, whose death had devastated so many people in Port Charles, including the man she had loved for years, Jason Morgan. Anna's heart raced as the reality set in. Sam was alive. Somehow, against all odds, the woman Port Charles had mourned was breathing, conscious, and imprisoned just like her. When they finally made visual contact, the shock on both their faces was unmistakable. Anna's eyes widened with a mixture of relief and confusion. "Sam? How are you alive? We all thought." Anna's voice trailed off, overwhelmed by The enormity of what she was seeing. Sam rushed toward the barrier between them. Her own face a mixture of desperation and determination. Anna, there's no time to explain everything right now. We need to get out of here. Faison has been keeping me in here for months conducting experiments. I don't fully understand what he's doing, but it's something to do with his lab work, his research. He's using people for something sinister. Planning the escape. With both women trapped in Faison's laboratory, they quickly realized that their only hope lay in working together. Anna's experience as a WASB agent and her tactical training, combined with Sam's resourcefulness and determination, created a formidable team. They began studying their environment carefully, looking for any weakness in their imprisonment. We need to stay calm and think this through, Anna said, her voice steady despite the dire circumstances. I've been in tight spots before. There's always a way out. Sam nodded firmly. I've been here long enough to learn the layout of this place. The guards rotate on a schedule. There's a window of time, maybe minutes every hours when the main corridor is less monitored. That's our opportunity. Over the next several hours, the two women formulated their plan. Anna used her knowledge of security systems and surveillance while Sam contributed her understanding of the physical layout and the guard rotation patterns. They waited for the right moment, the right shift change, the precise instant when their captors' attention would be divided. When the moment came, they moved with calculated precision. Working together, they managed to break free from their restraints using equipment found in the laboratory tools that Faison's own operation provided. Moving quietly through the corridors, they navigated past security checkpoints using Anna's tactical experience to avoid detection. Sam's knowledge of the facility proved invaluable as she led them through back passages and maintenance tunnels. Just a little further, Sam whispered as they crept through the darkness. The main exit is just ahead. Finally, they burst through the doors into the outside world, breathing fresh air for what felt like the first time in forever. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had escaped the shocking return to Port Charles. Their arrival back in Port Charles sent shockwaves through the entire community. When Anna and Sam walked into police headquarters, the reactions were instantaneous and overwhelming. Officers did double takes, unable to believe what they were seeing. News of their return spread through the town like wildfire. Within hours, poor Charles was buzzing with the impossible story. Samakal, believed dead, was alive. Anna Dian had been kidnapped and had managed to escape. At Jason's residence, the reunion was particularly emotional. Jason Morgan stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. Sam stood before him, alive, real, tangible. For a moment, words failed him entirely. Sam, I hear Jason's voice broke, overwhelmed by emotion. Everyone thought you were gone. I thought you were gone. Danny's been asking about you constantly. He never understood why his mother wasn't coming home. Sam's eyes filled with tears as she moved toward Jason. I know. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if I would ever get back here, if I would ever see you or Danny again. But I fought to survive because I knew I had to get back to him. To you. When Dante Falconer learned of Sam's return, his reaction was one of pure joy and relief. Dante had always cared deeply for Sam, and her presumed death had weighed heavily on him. The news that she was alive energized him with hope. Sam, thank God you're alive, Dante said when he saw her, embracing her warmly. This is incredible. The entire department will want to know every detail. The revelation about Faison. The most shocking revelation came when Anna and Sam explained the truth to Jason, Dante, and the Port Charles authorities. Caesar Faison was still alive. Far from being dead, as everyone had believed. Faison had orchestrated an elaborate operation involving a secret laboratory where he conducted mysterious experiments. The nature of these experiments remains somewhat unclear, but it was evident that they involved advanced technology and sophisticated research capabilities. Faison has been alive this whole time, Anna explained, her voice carrying both anger and frustration. He's been running some kind of scientific operation, conducting research that we don't fully understand yet. He kidnapped me because I was getting too close to uncovering his secrets. Sam added her perspective. He's been holding people in that facility. I don't know how many others. He's imprisoned there, but whatever he's doing, it's connected to Britt and Nathan returning. Their involvement in his operation seems central to whatever his endgame is. The revelation that Faison was alive changed everything. For years, Port Charles had believed the threat had been eliminated. The man who had caused so much suffering, who had terrorized Anna and countless others, was not only alive but actively engaged in new schemes involving advanced laboratory technology and mysterious experiments. The impact on Port Charles. The return of Sam and Anna combined with the revelation about Faison set the entire community on edge. The police department launched a comprehensive investigation into Faison's laboratory, while Jason worked with his contacts to gather intelligence about the facilities, location and operations. The knowledge that Faison remained alive and active forced Port Charles to reckon with a threat they thought had been permanently eliminated. For Jason particularly, Sam's resurrection raised profound questions about what had happened during those months when she was missing and what it meant for their future relationship. For Dante, the return of someone he cared about alive and well offered a glimmer of hope in a town that had been overwhelmed by darkness and violence in recent months. Anna, meanwhile, began the difficult work of rebuilding her sense of security and trust after her abduction. She had survived her encounter with Faison, and she was determined to use her knowledge to finally end the threat he posed to Port Charles once and for all. The mystery of Faison's laboratory, the nature of his experiments, and the full scope of his operation remained to be uncovered. But one thing was clear, the story was far from over, and poor Charles would need to come together to face the challenges that lay ahead. Sam was home. Anna was safe and the hunt for The truth about Caesar Faison had only just begun. Next, we will learn about the issue of one of the most emotionally powerful and heartwarming moments that General Hospital has delivered to its devoted audience in recent weeks. The latest episode featured a scene that soap opera fans have been eagerly anticipating for months, and it absolutely did not disappoint in any capacity. Joe Palmieri, the talented young violinist who has captured the hearts of Port Charles residents and viewers alike, finally uttered the word that Brooklyn Quartermain has been longing to hear since the truth about their biological connection was revealed. He called her mom, and in that single quiet moment, years of pain, regret, and hope converged into something truly special that resonated with audiences everywhere. The long-awaited mother-son connection. The journey to this pivotal moment has been anything but simple or straightforward for both characters involved. Brooklyn gave birth to Joe when she was merely a teenager, far too young to handle the enormous responsibilities of motherhood. Faced with impossible choices and limited options, she made the heart-wrenching decision to place her newborn son up for adoption, believing it would give him the best possible chance at a stable and loving life. For years, she carried the weight of that decision, never knowing if she had made the right choice or if her son would ever forgive her for giving him away. When Joe discovered the truth about his biological mother's identity, his initial reaction was understandably filled with anger, confusion, and feelings of abandonment. He struggled to reconcile the woman he had come to know and respect with the teenager who had given him up all those years ago. The revelation sent shockwaves through his entire world, forcing him to question everything he thought he knew about his identity and where he truly belonged. Brooklyn, demonstrating remarkable wisdom and emotional maturity, chose not to force the relationship or push Joe before he was ready. She received valuable counsel from those closest to her, people who understood the delicate nature of their situation and the importance of allowing Joe to process his feelings at his own pace. Instead of demanding immediate acceptance or forgiveness, she took a deliberate step backward, creating space for Joe to work through his complex emotions without feeling pressured or overwhelmed. This decision showed incredible restraint and genuine love as she prioritized her son's emotional well-being over her own desperate desire to connect with him. It was a painful waiting game, but one that ultimately proved to be the right approach, allowing their relationship to develop organically and authentically, rather than being forced into existence prematurely. Dandy's troubling pattern of harsh judgment. Unfortunately, while Brooklyn has demonstrated exceptional patience and understanding with Joe, the same cannot be said for Dante Falconer, Joe's biological father and a detective with the Port Charles Police Department. Dandy's approach to parenting his newly discovered eldest son has been marked by criticism, harsh judgment, and an apparent inability to extend grace during difficult situations. Most recently, Dante unleashed a verbal assault on Joe that left the young man emotionally devastated and questioning his place in the Falconer family. The incident occurred in the aftermath of Rocco Falconer's legal troubles when Dandy's younger son found himself facing serious consequences that could potentially impact his entire future. rather than approaching the situation with measured reason and attempting to understand all the factors at play. Dante immediately placed the blame squarely on Joe's shoulders, refusing to consider that perhaps the circumstances were more complicated than they initially appeared. The words Dante hurled at his eldest son were nothing short of cruel and deeply wounding. He told Joe in no uncertain terms that Joe should be the one sitting in a jail cell instead of Rocco, essentially saying that his firstborn son was more deserving of punishment than his younger brother. He went even further, making the accusatory claim that Joe had deliberately thrown Rocco under the bus, sacrificing his brother's well-being simply to impress a girl and elevate his own social standing. These accusations weren't just unfair. They were fundamentally character assassinations that revealed Dandy's apparent inability to see Joe as anything more than a troublemaker and a disappointment. After delivering this devastating verbal blow, Dante essentially wrote Joe off as a complete screw-up and walked away, leaving his son to deal with the emotional wreckage alone. For viewers who have been following this storyline closely, the moment felt painfully familiar, and many couldn't help but release a collective sigh of frustration and disappointment as they watched Dante once again fail his eldest son in a moment when Joe desperately needed paternal support and understanding. History repeating itself. This unfortunate pattern of behavior from Dante is not an isolated incident, but rather part of a disturbing trend that has emerged since Joe entered his life. The detective seems to have a particular blind spot when it comes to his eldest son consistently defaulting to blame and criticism rather than empathy and support. An earlier incident that mirrors the current situation occurred when Rocco was hospitalized for alcohol poisoning, a serious medical emergency that terrified everyone who cared about the young boy. During that crisis, Dante immediately targeted Joe with accusations, claiming that his older son had been grossly irresponsible by not immediately calling for medical assistance when he discovered Rocco had been drinking. According to Dante's version of events, Joe had made the dangerous and reckless decision to simply let Rocco sleep it off in the Quartermain boathouse rather than alerting adults who could have intervened and gotten the teenager proper medical attention sooner. Dante painted Joe as someone fundamentally lacking in responsibility and good judgment, someone who couldn't be trusted to make the right call in a crisis situation involving family members. What makes this earlier incident particularly notable is that it occurred before Dante even knew that Joe was his biological son, which raises interesting questions about whether Dandy's quick-to-judge attitude toward Joe stems from something deeper than their complicated family dynamics. In both situations, past and present, Joe has responded with genuine remorse and heartfelt apologies, taking responsibility for his actions and expressing sincere regret for any role he may have played in the unfortunate outcomes. However, Dante appears to have significant difficulty extending forgiveness to Joe, holding on to resentment and disappointment in ways that seem disproportionate to the actual circumstances. This inability to forgive and move forward has created a toxic dynamic in their father-son relationship, one that threatens to cause permanent damage if Dante doesn't examine his own behavior and make meaningful changes to how he interacts with his eldest child. The hospital scene that changed everything. The turning point in Joe and Brooklyn's relationship came during a crisis that brought the Quartermain family together at the hospital. Ned Quartermain, Brooklyn's beloved father and a pillar of the Port Charles community, had suffered a serious heart attack that sent shockwaves through everyone who loved him. The situation was dire and frightening, with family members gathering at the hospital to await news and offer support to one another during this terrifying ordeal. In a twist of fate that would prove to be meaningful beyond the immediate medical emergency, Joe was present when Ned collapsed and was able to spring into action, using his training and quick thinking to perform life-saving measures that kept Ned alive until professional medical help could arrive. His actions in those critical moments made him a hero in the eyes of the Quartermain family, and Brooklyn found herself overwhelmed with gratitude and maternal pride at her son's courage and competence under pressure. Michael Corinthos, recognizing an opportunity to help facilitate healing between mother and son, made the decision to call Joe and explicitly tell him that Brooklyn needed him during this difficult time. Michael's intervention demonstrated his understanding of the complex family dynamics at play and his desire to see Joe and Brooklyn build a strong relationship. When Joe arrived at the hospital, the atmosphere was charged with emotion, fear for Ned's health, mixing with the unresolved tensions that had existed between Joe and Brooklyn. Brooklyn made it abundantly clear to her son just how thankful she was for his quick actions that saved her father's life. And more importantly, she expressed genuine pride in the young man Joe has become. Unlike Dante, who seems unable to see past Joe's mistakes and perceived failures, Brooklyn has demonstrated a remarkable ability to extend grace and understanding to her son, even when he stumbles or makes errors in judgment. She recognizes that making mistakes is a normal and essential part of growing up, and that young people learn valuable life lessons through these experiences, ultimately becoming better, stronger, and more thoughtful individuals as a result. A mother's unconditional love. Brooklyn's heart has been breaking as she watches Joe suffer under the weight of Danny's harsh criticism and rejection. As a mother, even one who only recently reconnected with her biological child, she feels an instinctive and powerful desire to protect her son from pain and emotional harm. She doesn't want to see her only child hurting, especially when she believes that pain is being unfairly inflicted by someone who should be supporting and nurturing him instead. When Joe arrived at the hospital in response to Michael's call, the moment that unfolded between mother and son was simple in its execution, but profound in its emotional impact. The two of them held hands in a gesture that was both tender and significant. A physical connection that symbolized the emotional bond that was finally solidifying between them. It was in this moment of mutual vulnerability and support that Joe spoke the word Brooklyn had been longing to hear, finally calling her mom. For the very first time since learning the truth about their biological relationship. The beauty of subtlety and authentic emotion. The moment Joe uttered that single word, tears began flowing from viewers across the country who had been invested in this storyline. and rooting for these characters to find their way to each other. It was the payoff that General Hospital fans had been patiently anticipating delivered, with a subtlety and authenticity that made it all the more powerful and memorable. The scene was not over or melodramatic. Instead, it was written with care and nuance, allowing the actors to deliver performances that felt genuine and deeply moving. The beauty of the moment lay in its simplicity and in the way it showcased two characters truly connecting and bonding as mother and son in a way that felt earned and real. Perhaps the most touching aspect of the entire interaction was that Joe and Brooklyn were simultaneously comforting and supporting each other, their relationship becoming one of mutual care rather than a one-sided dynamic. Brooklyn wanted desperately to help Joe navigate his complicated and painful relationship with Dante, offering maternal wisdom and support as he processed his father's hurtful words and actions. Meanwhile, Joe wanted to provide reassurance to Brooklyn during her own moment of crisis, telling her with confidence and compassion that Ned would pull through his medical emergency and return to full health. Brooklyn also took the important step of explicitly disagreeing with Di's assessment of Joe and the situation with Rocco, making it crystal clear to her son that she felt Dante was completely out of line with his harsh accusations and cruel words. This validation from his mother provided Joe with something he desperately needed: confirmation that he wasn't crazy for feeling hurt by Danny's treatment and that someone in his life truly saw him for who he actually is, rather than viewing him through a lens of disappointment and criticism. The entire scene was beautifully orchestrated by Michael, whose understanding of family dynamics and desire to help facilitated a moment that gave viewers all the feels. As the saying goes, it was television at its finest, using the medium to explore complex family relationships and deliver emotional catharsis that resonates with audiences on a deeply personal level. Looking toward the future, now that this crucial breakthrough has occurred, General Hospital fans are hopeful that Brooklyn and Joe will continue moving forward on this positive path, taking the time and effort necessary to nurture their bond and build a strong, lasting mother-son relationship. The foundation has been laid and the potential for beautiful storylines exploring their growing connection is virtually limitless. It was refreshing and genuinely heartwarming to watch Brooklyn instinctively know exactly how to support and comfort Joe during his moment of pain, demonstrating maternal instincts that transcend the years they spent apart. Equally touching was seeing Joe step into the role of being an anchor and source of strength for his mother when she needed him most, showing that their relationship can be one of reciprocal support and genuine partnership rather than a traditional parent-child dynamic weighted in one direction. This is the beginning of something special, and viewers will undoubtedly be watching eagerly to see how their relationship continues to evolve and deepen in the episodes to come.